All right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh Juice, an indie game podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tommy Fresh, and joined, as always, it is...
Matty Juice. What is going on, Tommy? Episode 74 of the Fresh Juice podcast. And as always, it's great to have you on the show, Tom.
It is great to I'll agree with you there. It's great to have me on this show. We got a great one for you all this week. We are off the heels of 2 Certified Fresh Juices in a row. If you're new to this show, Certified Fresh Juice is our highest rating. So if you want to go back and look at those episodes, I also kind of spoiled what the ratings are. But if you're interested to see what we said about them, it's a good time over there. But will we repeat it this week is the question. And we are reviewing a game called The Three-Peat. Oh, yep. Boy. Listen, he's wearing the Eagles shirt. It might not happen. Die in the Dungeon, a new dice builder. It's in early access. I got to play the prologue at one point. I enjoyed it. So kind of had it on my radar. So pretty... not like hyped, but like, I was excited to play it. So we'll see if it meets expectations or really exceeds them. So we'll get to that. But first, how you doing? How was your weekend?
I am doing good. Yeah, I actually I had off of work today, and
really,
I took off of work, I should say,
okay.
Just because there's been some shitty stuff happening, and so my boss is like, "Hey, if you need to take a day, feel free to take it, and it won't like count or whatever." So,
nice.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'll do Monday. So yeah, it's been good to have a little bit of a long weekend there. I had like a good panini today. Yeah, it was a pastrami panini. And then what else did I do this weekend? Oh, my dad came over to the house and we like built some shelves. We're trying to we have this like weird, awkward room underneath our stairs. It's like we call it Harry Potter's closet, but
Sure.
or Harry Potter's room, I guess. But I don't know. We just it was a mess in there. So my dad came over and we like built some shelves that kind of go on just the side there and kind of made it like a second pantry. It never really had like a purpose. So that's great because our pantry was kind of like overflowing and just messy. Yeah, it was good. It's good to get something done in the house, and it kind of is that quality of life improvement, which is great.
Very nice.
Getting a new dishwasher too. We're doing adult things this past weekend because our dishwasher started leaking everywhere. And I think it's like over 20 years old probably because it's from the last owners. But anyway, just did some adult things this week, not too exciting, but, I'm excited as someone in my 30s now, like these things. I'm like, yeah, this is actually exciting for me because it's going to improve my daily life. So there you go, Tom. There it is.
Yeah, you got to get it in before the baby for sure.
Yeah.
Then all the focus goes that way. But listen, my weekend was busy. I had people over, or I should say, the wife had people over. I guess we're together, so we had people over, and we've met. And we partied the night away. We went to bed at like 4 a.m. And I haven't done that in a very long time, and I was feeling it yesterday, and I was feeling it while I was playing the game that we reviewed, or going to be reviewing. So I wonder if that's going to skew my opinion. I don't think so. I think I have a pretty good grasp on how I feel about this game. So it's good. And then last night saw a buddy that's home visiting from Canada. So, we're trying to keep him here, because we miss him is pretty much it. So that's it. Like last week, I'm trying to eat a little bit cleaner. So I like kind of trying to get on like a pretty good like plan, like rice, protein, veggies for lunch and dinner, and bestly. I mean, it worked out for pretty much the whole week until the weekend. I'm giving the weekends back to myself. That would be crazy. I can't be doing that all the time, but it's going well. I like doing it. Makes me feel a little bit better, clearer head and stuff like that. So hopefully it shows in the
Yeah.
podcast, or it might not. We will see. But hey, we do have some news for you all, as we always do. We do have a Discord. Check it out. It's in the show notes below. The Fresh Juice Discord. It's awesome. You can find out about cool games, demos, whatever. You can chat with us, chat with anybody. Well, not anybody, but anybody in the Discord. So check that out. And before we do get to the game review, we have some indie game news. For a long time, people thought that this was just a Balatro podcast, but it's been a minute since we had any Balatro news. We got a new Friends of Jimbo pack. I don't know if it hit today. I played Balatro this morning before I saw the announcement, so I didn't even check. But it is the kind of like Xbox edition, and because it's out on Game Pass now, which I guess is it never was. I didn't even realize. And alongside that, there are this Friends of Jimbo skin packs for all the face cards, and there was like a bunch. It was like Assassin's Creed. I think Fallout. What else am I missing?
Yeah, we got Assassin's Creed, Bug Snacks, Critical Role, Dead by Daylight, Fallout, and it says Vault Tech for Fallout, so I guess that's the character.
Oh yes, the thumbs up guy.
Yeah, Rust, Civilization 7, Slay the Princess. So a lot of them in this Friends of Jimbo. I think more than the other ones, right? I think the other ones are like 4 or 5. This is like, I don't know, 6 or 7.
There you go. That is more. I'll tell you that. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. It's not a lot of games I've played or spent a lot of time playing.
8.
But
8.
What was that? It's 8.
It's 8.
Yeah, there you go. It's double. It's double the amount.
Yeah.
But some of those were like some kind of curveballs. When I saw Rust, I was like,
yeah,
that's like a game that's like stood the test of time in a lot of ways. And I remember when it first came out, and I played a little bit of it, and that was like maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah,
maybe not that long, but like I think I was in college. I'm not sure, but
yeah, it's old. Yeah, it's an oldish game.
Yeah.
What interests me about that too is that like out of all those games, like Rust doesn't, as far as I know, it doesn't really have like a mascot, right? Like what I wouldn't necessarily
like a
see something
guy.
in like Balatro, the Balatro art style, and be like, that's Rust. I'd be like, that's a naked dude with a torch. Like, what game is that?
Yeah.
Which is actually what it is. I see like the rock and stuff, but I guess the way he's holding the rock, that's like a Rust kind of thing. So
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah, but definitely an interesting game to have on here out of all these. But good to see Balatro, doing another update. 4 of these before the content update. Pretty wild. 4 Friends of Jimbo.
Well, listen, it's got to be coming. I did read. I think I talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. I did read a interview from Local Thunk talking about the update, and it was kind of keeping the lips sealed, as it were. But you also put Local Thunk posted something. Was this about the Peggy issue?
Yes, yeah. So Local Thunk tweeted, after an appeal from my publisher, Balatro has been reclassified by Peggy from 18 plus to 12 plus. And he goes on to say, this is a good step from Peggy, bringing nuance to their ratings criteria that used to be 18 plus or nothing. I hope this change will allow developers to create without being unfairly punished. So, I think this is an awesome step. I think there should be a lot more nuance in like ratings in general. Like, why do we only have like 4 ratings like for games? Or I mean, even for movies, like I feel like you can kind of, I guess it might be a little bit different for movies because those are kind of set in what they are. Games, or I guess a little bit open-ended, can have updates, things like that. But I think this is great because Local Thunk has clearly been against kind of the gambling view that some people have with Balatro, and like, oh, it should be in like a casino or whatever, which we might have said on the show when we first played it, because we would win money. That's why. But I think this is it's a small update, but it's also could have like a big ripple effect for those ratings out there. So pretty cool.
Peggy, about time, Peggy, or as I like to call her, Margaret. which I believe is the somehow the nickname for Margaret is Peg. I don't understand.
Oh my
it.
God,
Did you
that's
not know that?
true. No, I did, but I forgot about that. That is
Yeah.
true. That's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But other than that, Steam Next Fest is going on right now. So a lot of demos out there. I think next week we're going to probably cover some demos that we checked out. That would be kind of a fun episode. I think we did that a lot. Maybe one of the Next Fests. But, keep an eye out for that. And if you see any really cool demos, let us know because demos are awesome. You get to get a little taste. So, and like half the games that we ended up really liking, we found on a demo initially. Now, speaking of a demo or a prologue, is kind of the weird like middle ground between early access and a demo. But Die in the Dungeon, the game that we're reviewing this week, was a prologue that I had played. What is it? It is a dice builder, roguelike dice builder. This is not unlike Slay the Spire, but the description is fight your way through a mysterious dungeon in this deck-building, turn-based roguelike game where you don't use cards, but dice. Deal with enemies by combining powerful dice on your board, boost their effects with magical relics, and risk it all hoping for a good roll on unexpected encounters. Now, this gameplay, if you're familiar with, I think Slay the Spire is probably the best example we have of this kind of formula. Your person is on the left, the enemies are on the right, and you have cards, in this case, dice to play. Now, you're going to see the classic, roguelike, what do you call it? Like the web, the map of, multiple different like choices in terms of which direction to go on the map to get to the final boss, right? And that's very indicative of what we see in a lot of games right now that are trying to do this. Now, where the cards are not, the dice are. And they all will have a certain kind of ability, whether it's blocking or attacking. There are some that buff a certain area. Now, there is a board where you can fit these dice into, which is kind of how you're going to create different kinds of strategies and synergies. And it all depends sometimes on how you place these dice. So there's the basic deck that you get is going to have some attacks, some blocks, some heals, and some boost dice or whatever. So the boost will basically light up certain blocks in the block that you're playing the dice for you to increase the numbers of the dice that you rolled. It sounds all convoluted. It's very actually simple, right? So basically your hand is all the dice and they get rolled and they all have X amount of sides to them. And, if it's a 4-sided dice, it's only going to have 4 options. If it's a 6-sided dice, it's going to have 6 options. And there are ways to kind of modify them as you go through. So you're kind of going through. You see the intentions of the enemies. It's turn-based, so you can be like, okay, this enemy is going to attack me for 10. I should focus on blocking and maybe sneak in a little bit of damage too. So you'll load up on blocking dice first. You always, I don't know if you always, but like against most enemies, you will go first. So like if you increase your block, you will have defense before the enemy hits you. Because as soon as you submit your dice, everything happens. But you go first, which is good to know. Now, sometimes you'll both get the attack off. I don't know if that's all the time. I noticed it when I died once. I was like, I thought I was going to kill the enemy, but I didn't. Now you can choose which enemy you're targeting, which is kind of cool. So you can kind of plan out your turn like that. And yeah, it's kind of the gameplay, right? You're just kind of going through. When you win, you get the option to pick one of 3 new dice, add it to your deck. And then there's also these relics that work a lot like the relics in Slay the Spire, where they're going to give you kind of a permanent boon or a permanent buff to certain things, or will reward you for playing certain kind of dice in a certain kind of way. And yeah, the challenge here though is when you run into more difficult enemies, they'll change the way your board is. They'll block certain squares on your board to make it tougher for you to do boosts and stuff like that. So it's a pretty fun gameplay experience. I feel like the only thing that I wanted more out of the actual gameplay was more synergies, because this is where, like, I like these dice building games. I think they're a lot of fun, but sometimes it just feels like without the card aspect, you have a lot more of a limited range of like design, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's the hardest thing here, because it's they have like interesting dice for you to use, but sometimes you're like, well, I don't want to just another attack. I want the attack to do this or that. And like you get a little bit of that here and there. You can like modify dice to have like poison or whatever, but it felt like it wasn't really coming as much as I wanted in the dice aspect of things. But that being said, I think as you unlock more dice and more relics, it gets a little bit better. But in the initial gameplay loop, first couple gameplay loops, it felt like you were kind of sticking to similar strategies every single time, which is it's probably fine. Like it's still a pretty deep game and it's in early access, so I feel like there's still a lot of room to grow these synergies, and it's still a really classic gameplay loop that if you kind of like Slay the Spire or stuff like that, you're kind of like this.
Yeah, I will say I think they did a good job of like the onboarding for the game, because to me, there's and we'll talk about this also on the art side, but there's a good amount to this game that you need to remember, just because I've never played like a dice builder before. So this is kind of, it took me a bit to realize, oh, the every time I'm drawing, it's rolling the dice for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then that value, applies. So I didn't know if it was something like I'm rolling the dice, and based on that, something happens. So I think they did a good job explaining that, and like, it's definitely was a game for me where like I was going in with different expectations with the gameplay, and then um as I went through the onboarding, it like, I was like, oh, like okay, it's not what I thought, but this is not like super complicated, but there are a good amount of kind of systems and like a good amount of text you have to read if you're just learning, how to play, and understanding what the icons are and all that sort of stuff. So it had, I guess, more of a learning curve is what I'm trying to say than I was originally kind of thinking. But I did find the encounters pretty rewarding. Obviously, I think it's a lot more fun like when you're on the offensive than when you're trying to just survive and you're just throwing up any blocks that you have. But I definitely agree about kind of the variety of like synergies. Like there's not a lot of I guess really interesting effects that can happen, at least like in the beginning. Like it takes a while to get those things, like when you reach a shop, or like, where you can apply things to dice, and then you're kind of playing it a little bit differently. So I can definitely see how, if maybe there were cards, I think it's just because we play a lot of card games, and those effects on those cards are typically, or you play a lot, but I've played a decent amount of card games, and like the effects that happen on cards are like a lot more significant than like
Mm-hmm.
what's happening on the dice. I found a lot of the time, like I would have like leftover dice, like extra attacks that like I just didn't need, and I just kind of like, cruise through like certain enemies, and certain levels kind of felt easier than other levels. But yeah, it would be cool if maybe the variety of dice that you have when you kind of start, like your starting deck or whatever you want to call it, um, is it just kind of has maybe some poison cards are thrown in there, like you said, or I forget some of the other abilities, but I think there's an ability where like if you attack one enemy, it also does a certain amount of damage to the other enemy, like things like that, like kind of more interesting sort of synergies maybe could kind of happen with that. especially with those tiles that you get where it like buffs the attack damage or block damage or whatever it is, buffs the value. But one thing with the game that like I mean, maybe you can explain it to me, but with the gameplay, I don't understand the board. Why does the board look like that? Is that just like does it not really have a difference? Because for those who aren't watching, like it's a diamond shape and there's 9 slots. Um, but I don't know, like for whatever reason, like the orientation of the board, I was just like, I don't am I supposed to put the block? Like, does it matter where I'm putting the block? Like that sort of stuff I just didn't know really. Um, I guess it doesn't really matter, but does it reach a point? I mean, maybe I just didn't get there. Does it reach a point where like where you're placing these specific things matters?
Well, the boost cards do matter, right? Where you're placing them because
Yeah.
they will um, give a boost to a spot 4 spaces away or all within 1 space away, yada yada yada. So it matters. Now, this is not the only board though. At you get different shaped boards as the game
Okay.
progresses. You unlock stuff, and you know it is an interesting piece to it. I don't really know if there is some kind of like game that I'm not familiar with, like a real dice game that I'm not familiar with that it's kind of based on, to be honest.
Mm,
But yeah, they're as the boards change, the synergies definitely change as well. But yeah, I know it could be a little weird because you're like, why is it like this? There's not really a
yeah.
lot of explanation. It just is. But it, I think that is part of the interesting variation in the game, the replayabilities. You start using almost more like akin to Balatro. You start using different decks.
Yeah.
You start using different boards, um, and or the boards that you are given access to as the game progresses become either more challenging or just like will work better with different dice, et cetera, et cetera. So you know, it's yeah, I think that's an understandable thing to be a little like not worried about, but like confused by because it is a little weird. It's unique to this game from what I can
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And maybe it's because I kind of went in thinking this is going to be about like rolling. I'm going to roll each die, and that just doesn't happen. You know, like it's obviously like you're I don't know, just placing dice on a board that have already been rolled.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's probably just how I kind of went into it. But by no means do I think it's like a real issue. I just didn't know if
Mm-hmm.
there was like major significance behind it. Um, but yeah, I think this game does a good job in the gameplay category of capturing like why Slay the Spire is so great. Like I think that there's enough depth to it, even in early access, to uh, to really just kind of make every run interesting.
Yeah.
At least like from the runs that I played, it felt like each one I was like having a kind of a different strategy based on like the different enemies and different like the different pathing that you have to go through. Um, yeah, so I think in the gameplay category they did a great job with that.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think there's a lot of positives to take from it. It's a really great start for early access. Now, in story wise, there's not a whole lot going on here. You are this frog. I don't even remember his name, but you're a frog and you're going through the dungeon. There are other characters you can unlock, but you start off with just the frog, and that's it. It's pretty cool. It's like the world they built is pretty neat. Like it's silly. It doesn't take itself too seriously. I the enemy design we'll talk about in the visuals, but like in terms of like the choices they made for the way they built this world felt pretty familiar to me, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like I remember like playing like DS games and stuff like that had this same feel, right? It feels very 2002, 2003 in a way. This doesn't feel like a full blast from the past, like a pixel art game. It has this
Yeah,
kind of like Game Boy Advance slash Nintendo D, like first Nintendo DS cartoonishness to it, which
Yeah.
I appreciated, like in terms of the world building. But yeah, no story to be found here. Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying, and I kinda think it's like, a similar story with, like, Slay the Spire, where, like, Slay the Spire art style is, like, you know, not not kind of reminiscent of like pixel art or like kind of retro in that way, but it definitely seems like a little dated from when it kind of came out, which I think was like on purpose. But yeah, as far as like story, I mean, I think it would be cool if there was more of a story because the character that you play as like this little frog dude, right? Like you
yeah.
said, like he's awesome. So maybe that's something that they'll be adding in their roadmap, maybe some more story elements, but it's probably not a priority for them.
I mean, there is a roadmap and there is mention of story, and we'll get to the roadmap before we give a rating. But yeah, no, I hope that that happens as well. Visual wise, I already touched on it. I like this art style. I imagine I could have played this on my Game Boy Advance SP, right? And it would have ran fine, I think, hopefully. But like it just is, it's cute, right? It's a cute game where sometimes they can push these kinds of games in either direction. I feel like, I've played a decent amount of like deck builder roguelikes or dice builders even that are like, this is like heavy, dark, like fantasy, boom, boom, boom. And then you play stuff like this and Ember Ward, that's a little bit more vibrant and has like
Mhm.
cutesy characters, but still delivers on the gameplay aspect. And I think this game looks great. Easy on the eyes. I like the character design. I already mentioned like there's a lot of life in this game, you know, and even like that. This is something that I would give this game over Slay the Spire. I think that watching the way these characters move is so
Mhm.
much more interesting to me than how Slay the Spire does it, right? And Slay the Spire is a certified classic at this point, right? And I'm looking at this, I'm like, I wish Slay the Spire might have been a little bit more like this. So
Yeah.
I really like it. The idea. I mean, it's a simple idea, but like the choice to make each color of dice do something different so like you can start to remember. You don't even have to be like, oh, that's attack for 2. I'm just going to place that. I know that. Or that one's splash damage for 8 or whatever. Like that, the player in the video just put. So like it's a really clean looking game. I like the font too. It's pretty fun. So yeah, I really like the way this game looks.
I'm with you. I think the art style is really interesting. The characters you come across look cool. I mean, especially like this guy that's on the screen right now. Um, and yeah, I was also kind of like examining the enemies because they were interesting looking. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the way the game looks. It also kind of has almost like especially like in these, I don't know, I get like point and click like flash game kind of vibes, like with like you got like the ink and the map of all the levels on the right, and then you got like your bag down on the left, but it looks like it's kind of sitting on these rocks and almost kind of like establishes like a foreground, right? And then what you're doing is kind of, I guess, behind that. So I think they did a great job. Yeah, art wise, I also agree about the dice. It makes it easier to learn when you're like, oh, the green one heals. That makes sense. The red one attacks. That makes sense. The blue one blocks. Like that makes sense to me too. And then like when you get like poison, the poison attribute, it's like a little bubbly kind of poison icon that is in like the corner. So yeah, all that makes sense. Really, the only kind of gripes I had with the art kind of more has to do with like, all right, so the UI, I enjoy the artistic side of the UI, but it definitely took me a bit to like
Mm.
figure out like where I really should be looking or like what I know it kind of points out like for the enemies like this icon means like their intention that they're going to attack and this is their health and all that sort of stuff, but I still kind of found myself getting a little like lost a bit. I think they maybe could do a better job of like, you have basically a dagger icon that goes next to the enemy that you've chosen to target. Maybe if that was a little bit more like pronounced a bit, maybe like because you're in a dungeon, maybe there's kind of like a little kind of spotlightish sort of thing on the one that you're aiming to attack because I assume it's kind of dark down there, and also because like um, the background is, like, pretty active. I did find myself, like, sometimes, like, losing, like, "Oh, that's how much they were attacking for?" Like, I just it would not be something I would, like, look at and check because of how it looks. I don't know, it wasn't, like, drawing my eye, basically. So, it's just, like, small things like that I think are just a part of early access, like, I'm sure they'll fine-tune that, and if we play this game in, like, a year, right, I'm sure we'll notice all those little differences that they've made. So it really wasn't anything that took away from the gameplay, and the art overall is just like fantastic. I mean, like, look at this like relic
Yeah.
shop here, like that is so cool looking. If you're not watching the video, I highly recommend it because we especially with games like this, we get to show off like how awesome the art is. But yeah, so I think overall, yeah, the art was great. Just those small little things that I really think would make it like perfect if they were to like tweak those.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I will say, I really enjoyed the music here too. Uh, the sound was like nothing like crazy sound effects wise that I was like really jumping out, but like it had this really adventurous, almost and like Indiana Jones esque feel to the soundtrack. Like even at one point, because I started doing something on a different screen, I had put it down, and I'm like listening to it. I'm like, okay, now I want to play more of this again, actually. And
Yeah.
it felt pretty good. There were a couple blips there, and I think that might be just something that needs to be like smoothed out. Where I can tell when it was looping, and I was like, oh, okay, they need to figure that out. But hopefully they can smooth that out. It's not. It's probably more on the performance side thing that they got to figure stuff like that out. But the music itself was pretty hype, and I know that I think they're going to put out the OST, which is, clearly means that they have a lot of faith in the rest of the music that they already have. So
Yeah.
very excited for that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the music was great. It fit perfectly for like the environment you're in. Like you already feel, just looking at the screen, like we're watching it right now without the music. Like you can already like kind of picture what like great music for this would be, because you feel like, yeah, you're on that adventure, and you're going through these different like dungeon rooms. So I'm with you. Yeah, I didn't really uh like you know, have a lot to say about the sound effects. One thing though that I forgot to say with the art, which also ties into the sound effects, is I think it would be cool to, as each turn starts and you get your kind of hand of the dice, is like have them roll in. Like let me see the animation. I know they kind of like roll on the bottom, but like make it a little bit more
Pronounced.
like what is it gonna roll to? Oh,
Yeah.
I got a great hand, And I know that might like make the sessions a little bit longer, but I think it could be really rewarding and have like that great kind of like dice sound, like rolling sound, that kind of accompanies it. I don't know, little details like that I think could be cool. Um, but maybe it's also something that they tested, especially with the sound, and they found it like too annoying every single time that you're, because you're drawing your hand every turn. So I don't know, just a little something like that. But music wise, I agree, really great and fits with the overall vibe of the game.
Well, you're kind of onto something there with kind of giving the player a choice to have this pronounced version, right? Like I play Balatro at like full speed now, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes like I'll see it pop up on TikTok and people are playing it or whatever, and it's they're still playing at the one time speed, which at first like bothers me, and then I'm like, oh, you're getting like the full effect of what each card is triggering on your jokers and stuff like that, rather than it just kind of going a little faster, and you can't really you could try to guess, like if you didn't know, you could try to guess what is happening with your jokers, but like you get the full effect. I think they could kind of benefit from having what you just suggested as
Yeah,
like, oh, make the dice more important, like not important, make them hyper. You gotta like you want to be hyped to see these dice and what they
yeah,
do, right? Rather than like, oh, okay, here's my options now. Let me see what I can do with it. So I think you're onto something right there. But
Well, thank you.
oh, no
Thank you.
problem. Hey, listen,
Yeah.
that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, but you make a great point too about like Balatro, like, you know, when they could easily have just kind of like every time you get a new hand, just like rise it up from the bottom, right? But instead
hmm
they're, like giving you
Yeah.
your hand. And then when the jokers are going and everything, like, dun, 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 like it's just very satisfying to have that happen, regardless of like the speed that you're playing at. You kind of amped for that. So, yeah, again, what I already said, but I think it'd be great to have that in a game like this. I think it'd work really well. It
Yeah.
doesn't work well in like every kind of game, but there's something like so specific, right, about like dice. Like when you say like, "Oh, I got some dice," like I don't know. I just picture
The sound
Ocean's
effect,
11. Yeah,
yeah, the sound effect of a
playing
dice
craps.
roll is like something we're all familiar with and like you
Yeah,
kind of look
exactly.
for. So yeah,
Yeah.
if they could lean into that, it'd be nice. Now, performance wise, I mentioned I guess I had some issues, but like it was like some music stuff, but nothing really like visually or like game breaking or anything like that. It is early access, but this is one of those games like this is a full game that they're just gonna add everything else to as they go through. But did
Yeah.
you have any issues?
No, yeah, no issues on my end. I think it ran great, and it's a not a very fast paced game, like moving game. So I think it would run well on a lot of different things. And I think Slay the Spire is on mobile, right? So I could see this like
Oh yeah.
making its way to mobile at some point for sure. I mean, kind of like what you were saying, like it could run on a Game Boy SP.
Yeah.
It definitely feels like that. So yeah, I didn't have any performance issues. I didn't notice any audio issues either, but doesn't mean they're obviously not there if you were hearing them. So maybe it was a level I didn't get to or something like that, where that bug is. But yeah, no problem from my end, Tommy.
Yeah. And before we do get to the rating, I do want to talk about the roadmap, what they have up so far, and you can see this on the Steam page. This is what comes with the game in its early access state in the original launch. 3 areas, so like full areas to a boss, which is kind of what you get with like Slay the Spire anyway. 3 areas filled with new enemies and 5 unique bosses that you can run into. 3 playable characters, each with a unique board and exclusive dice types. 100 relics to collect and experiment with. 31 different dice types with 14 combinable properties. So there's probably more there that like as I play more of, I'll see more of those synergies. 4 extra difficulty levels, 40 plus achievements and unlockables, and full localization in 11 languages. So that's a lot for the launch, I would say. And then the next step is Q2 2025 with controller support, which I do think this could use as soon
Yeah,
as possible. More difficulties and endless mode, and then all they put there else was and more with the with the hand pointing up emoji. And then what's next? Better events. So they're gonna have like live events, like dice rolling events to come back. A codex update with the bestiary and lore, which is always great for story in a game like this, where you're like, maybe I don't need it during the game, but I want to read about it, like
yeah,
after a run or something like that. More content with enemies, relics, dice, and more. And then story, ending, unlocks, and secrets. So
Ooh,
stories on the mind for sure. So pretty interesting. That's going to bring us to the rating. Our ratings are as follows: certified fresh juice. These are our Balatros of the world. A steel, things like the Cub and a couple other games that we've given a steal at this point. Quite a few. Get on sale. A lot of games fall into this category where they're not quite great, but there's redeemable qualities, and you might want to wait till it's on sale. Exactly what it says. And then manager special, maybe a deep discount or free to play because we didn't really think it was that good, or maybe we're just really not into the genre. But that is that category. And then last is spoiled milk, games that we think are really not worth anybody's time. So Matt,
yo, you go first, Tom. You
this
go
all right.
first.
I'll go first. Take it easy. All right. So I like this game. I think this is a good game, and it's like honestly a great start in this early access. And there's just a couple things I want to see more of, and based on the roadmap, I think we're going to get more of it. This is a game I'll continue to play. It's kind of right up my alley. Um, I'm excited for when it's probably a little bit better to play on like Steam Deck, or we see even like a Switch release at some point, or even mobile, of course. But it's good. I don't think it's at its fullest potential yet, so I have to give it a steal because the price here is $12.99, and right now it's off 25% off. So I think it's just under $10, and that's until March 7th. Is that what I'm reading? And it's a good game. I like a lot of what's going on here. I want to probably explore it more, but I think that's a good sign. I think even just talking about it more in this podcast, like I was like, oh, you know what? I'll kind of want to hop back in and go another run or two tonight while I'm editing, or after I'm editing, I guess, or while I'm waiting for the the video to export. But it's a good game. I think it's a steal. I could very well see at 1.0 this kind of creep up into the certified fresh juice range. Now, what about you, Matt?
Yeah. All right. Fine. Chill. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that there's just a few things the game kind of missed on a little bit, and it could be obviously a result of it being in early access. Didn't have time to add it in yet, or whatever it might be. But I think it's still a great game. Uh, Honestly, my biggest kind of concern with the game is I feel like people will probably play this and then Slay the Spire 2 comes out and they probably won't play it as much just because it is similar to Slay the Spire. It has a lot of influence from it. So I still think it's a great game, giving it a steal. I just think that there's, hopefully they can add those sort of things before Slay the Spire 2 comes out. Cause I just have a feeling once that game comes out and they add those things that we've been looking for, most people maybe won't care. And like that's what I don't want to hear. Like I don't want that to happen, but just because they are very similar kind of games from the like core gameplay aspect, but still giving it a steal. I will continue to play it. I also we were going through the show, was like, yeah, I want to do another run, try something else. So I will definitely continue to play it, but curious to see basically how it does when Slay the Spire 2 comes out. And maybe it's sticky, maybe it's people are going to keep playing it. It does have a great rating on Steam. I think it's very positive. So with like over 500 reviews. So definitely has impressed some people, and I'm right there with them. I think I went in thinking something else for this game and came out, oh, this was actually had more depth than I was thinking for an early access game, and was quite fun. And I kind of was relating it to like Ballionaire when we were playing that. I'm like, that just didn't have like a lot of depth really to it. It was like RNG focused. This one I felt a little bit more in control and had a good time playing that. So yeah, there you go.
And the one thing that I will say, add there at the end is, you bring up an interesting point about Slay the Spire 2. Listen, Slay the Spire 2 could suck. I doubt it, but it could. Yeah. It's coming out early access for some reason. But this does fill a niche, I think, that like something like Slay the Spire and other deck builder roguelikes don't fill. And there are a lot of people who just do not want to play a card game, right?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, I like dice. That's more my speed. That's what I like. So I think there are a decent amount of people that this could even be like their foray into the genre, right? So
that's true.
So I do think it has a lot going for it there, not only with that and also just being really cute to look at. So
yeah, and it's also got, you make a good point because it's also got the benefit of like what we talk about with Balatro, of like people know poker, right? Like they, so you already kind of have a foundation. So like when it comes to dice, like people know how dice work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously very simple, but even like more than just the 6-sided die, like people, especially in our generation, with, I don't know, every time we go to PAX, there's what, 10 different dice vendors selling
D&D's the biggest it's ever been.
Yeah.
And this kind of fits kind of right in there a little bit. So
yeah, it's got dungeon in the name too. There you go.
My God. But no, Let us know if you check it out. I saw it was on Capolo's wish list, so if you're listening, Cap, you might want to get it. Who knows? And it's like less than $10. Anyway, next week, Next Fest demos, and we do have some listener questions. First, coming from Capolo. There have been several indie video game to board game adaptations. For example, Binding of Isaac 4 Souls, Slay the Spire, Eternal, Frostpunk, etc. Have you tried any? If you did, what's your favorite one, and which one would you recommend to a casual board game playgroup?
Um, Great question, Capolo. So I don't think I've played an indie game board game before. I More recently, the I guess or the most recent, it wasn't very recently, but the most recent like video game to board game that I played was a Dark Souls board game, which as far as I was aware wasn't like influenced by another game. I find like a lot of these adaptations um for movies to game, board game, or um uh, video game to board game, they're just kind of like it's another version of Catan, right? But it's just like themed to this IP or something like that. So I don't know if that's I can't imagine that's the case with some of these indie games, but the Dark Souls one was fun. I don't think I'd recommend it as a casual board game to play. But it, obviously, that's I don't really think is considered an indie game. Dark Souls might be. I mean, at the time, it might have been.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, you know, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think. Are there any you've played, Tom?
Um,
Loop Hero?
no, I mean that would be the perfect kind of game for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
I didn't.
Balatro. I play poker.
Yeah, I would say the board game version of Balatro. It's called Poker. You can go with like you don't even. It's not even that hard to find a play group. You just go to a place that smells like cigarettes. They're all there.
Yep.
And you can. It costs a lot, or you can gain cash, which is cool too.
Yeah.
I've never. I'm trying to think. Like video game to board game.
Yeah, I'm looking that up right now.
I heard good things about the Slay the Spire
Hmm.
one. You know, really kind of emulated the Slay the Spire video game experience pretty well. Taking a look here. Was it Frogger?
Yeah, I saw that too.
Maybe.
Frogger.
Golly. Why does it show me Othello? There's no. What is that? That was a board game,
Yeah.
right?
I'm
I played the Minecraft card game, like board game card game. That was fine. I don't think I'd recommend it.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's tough. Apparently Caves of Cud has a dice game or something. I'm looking at a list of a bunch of indie games that have like tabletop games.
really?
Actually, Dark Souls technically is on here for these indie games, but oh no, these are just video games, not just indie. So I don't know. That's a good question. I also think the thing is that like a lot of these indie studios, like I would imagine it's pretty expensive making something physical, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like only the premium indie games probably have these tabletop games. And yeah, I just haven't really played them. Maybe it's just because of my um you know, uh, kind of understanding that like a lot of these adaptations are usually not like the most unique board games. They're just trying to sell
Yeah.
their IP again. But I don't know. I mean, if you're saying the Slay the Spire one sounds good, I think that could be a really interesting board game if every run is basically different,
Yeah.
right? That could be pretty cool. And it kind of gives me almost like Boss Monster vibes, which is not based on a video game, but
Kinda.
um,
Right.
yeah,
Like it
sorta in a
is.
way. Yeah, like an NES, game, but, Boss Monster is a great one. I recommend that. You're basically, building a dungeon to stop, uh, the person going through the dungeon. You're acting as the boss monster. So, it's a pretty cool game, but that's, again, I don't think based on an actual indie game, but what about you? You find anything on your end?
Um, no. Oh wait, I just saw something. Oh, did you know there's a Sea of Thieves board game?
Oh, I think I have it.
Oh,
Haven't played it though.
okay.
I haven't played it yet, just because I think it might be more than 2 people and, like,
Yeah.
gotta be in the right setting for that.
Well, sorry, Cap. We, I play good board games.
Pokemon, you
Pokemon.
know? Yeah.
I mean, I played the Pokemon board game. Like, where you remember that one from like when
A
Pokemon was really
board game.
popping?
No, I don't think
It
so.
was like the Master Trainer Pokemon Master Trainer
Was
board
it
game.
was it like a Pokemon Stadium?
No, no,
Yeah.
it was like it was like a board game. You would travel
Oh,
through Kanto. You don't remember this box? It had like all of the Pokemon, the 151 Pokemon, or maybe it was just
no.
150. It didn't have Mew on it. Oh, this
I
game
don't
was sick. I don't know if it was good, but it was sick.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a 2005 board game. Yeah, I don't think I ever played this.
Yeah, I think
The cards look
they had
the
like little
cards look
circle
familiar.
cards and stuff like that too. Like they
Yeah,
look like Pokeballs. Anyway, that
yeah.
game's sick, Cap. If you want to play that one, it's probably hard to find, to be honest. Um, Next question comes from K I was playing Grounded and found out if you feed an ant queen an infected offering, that the New Game Plus will have an alternate ant queen. Do you think New Game Plus and other games should add things like that from a previous playthrough?
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I think more games should have New Game Plus, because I think, especially single player games that maybe pride themselves on like how difficult it is. I think they should always have a New Game Plus. I know one more recently that is an indie game is Another Crab's Treasure. Really enjoyed that one. Still doesn't have a New Game Plus as far as I know, and they are working on adding it. But I think that that's something I'd like to see in more games, and yeah, more variety in a second playthrough, right? Would be great. I really think my first kind of foray into something like that was like Master Quest for Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Like that, all the dungeons were different and harder.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was really cool, and I would definitely like to see that more in games in general. But I think that's also why like roguelikes, right, have like taken off, right? Because every run is different,
Yeah,
So it's
every
kind
run's
it's
New Game Plus.
exactly, yeah. But for definitely for like single player games, I'd like to see it, at launch for these games.
I guess roguelikes are more like New Game Exponent, right?
Yeah.
This is like it's getting cubed a million times. Uh, yeah, I like the idea of this. You know what game that does just kind of release New Game Plus that we reviewed, gave a really good rating, and is right now I think 50% off. Four Blasters.
Oh, all right.
Check
I
it
didn't know
out.
they had a new game plus. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm due to hop back into that game. That game was awesome. But yeah, New
Yeah.
Game Plus is sick, and I like the idea of what you're talking about, K-More, where you do something in your first playthrough, or even just like if you're playing the regular base game and you're just like, oh, like it presents you with like a decision. And you don't really
Yeah.
know what the decision does, but then you play like New Game Plus and you're like, wait a second. Like I decided to kill this character,
Yeah.
and then in New Game Plus it's like another character rose to power because of it. That's like sick.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing in like specifically like I think of Elden Ring a lot with New Game Plus, right? I don't know if they were kind of the originators of that terminology. But uh I was so excited to do New Game Plus in Elden Ring, and I did it like 3 or 4 times, and every time was just like pretty easy, because you're just so overpowered from your first playthrough that and and there's also things that happen in Elden Ring where like if you choose or any of the Souls games, if you choose like to kill a certain NPC, like you lose that entire storyline, right? But in New Game Plus, I don't believe that like happens, like that they
Mm.
just come back. So yeah, it'd be great if like your decisions had more weight and kinda carry it over, and it would almost be like an extended,
Yeah.
roguelike, right? Like a story, like just a yeah, I mean, that'd be really cool. especially maybe even for like Telltale style games, right? Like
Yeah.
you can do New Game Plus, right? And like you get different outcomes of what could happen. Could definitely maybe in this world of AI that we're heading into, that will be more a possibility from like a dialogue standpoint or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? Not that I want that to be too integrated into games, but um,
Well, they could
you never
probably
know.
use it to actually, maybe not so much the dialogue, but actually like remember remember
True.
the thing
Yeah.
that happened, because
Yeah.
I feel like that's like probably the hardest thing about it, right? Like this whole idea that we're basing off of what happened in Grounded, right?
Yeah.
Is that that's probably a lot to code, right? And to just like a lot of memory for a game to have to like, you know, remember all that stuff. So yeah, pretty
Yeah.
interesting. Now, Arcarp comes in, and I know Arcarp personally loves cozy games. What would be your ideal cozy game, whether it's genre or anything like that?
Oh man. Um, Honestly, I think my ideal cozy game would be a like the foundation of it would be Animal Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Animal Crossing, just has a lot of like stationary moments, right? Whether you're trying to connect to something or you're going to like an island, like sometimes it can take a while to load, and like it's not a very fast paced game. And I think there's actually a game on Steam called Dinkum that I think I talked about like ages ago, but it's essentially Animal Crossing, but it's like it's on Steam and it's like open world. I think there's maybe like multiplayer and stuff like that. But if there was like an official Animal Crossing that was like maybe way more open world and like just more seamless, and also had like that kind of maybe like MMO community feel. Like I would love to like go into a town in Animal Crossing and it's real players and you could trade with them.
Mm.
I don't know. I feel like I could sit back on the couch and like play a game like that for as long as I played Animal Crossing, but just like, for hours basically.
Yeah.
I don't know. That Animal Crossing to me was always a game where I could just like the hours would fly by and it was just chill. Like I had no stress whatsoever. Even though I was so in debt, to Tom Nook and Nook's Granny. So um yeah, probably something like that. If I had to make up a game, it would be based on Animal Crossing.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it is the ultimate cozy game. So this is not a cop out, but like I think I would like a deck builder roguelike. But no.
Shocker.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
But it's dice.
But it's nice and on sale right now. No, no, it's not combat based, right?
Okay.
So whether it's like each encounter or whatever, rather than it being combat, you have these cards as like whatever. It could even be like you have to play cards to impress people by the way you designed this house. Like you get like a blank house and your deck does all these different things. You're like, and there's different combos, right? You're like, well, if I paint this green and I use this green like sofa or whatever, that's gonna be like the combos or something like that. It sounds crazy, but it's more like a puzzle game, and I don't think you should be able to lose, right? I
Mm,
don't think it should be a roguelike in the sense that like you're gonna repeat it every single time. And maybe that doesn't even make it a roguelike, but it's more of like it's always endless mode, but like you are still progressing and you can always change your deck, and it's almost like being like a real life card game, right? Where you just are always playing, but like you can hop in, like, oh, I'll play a couple encounters, get a few new cards from my deck or whatever. That would be pretty sweet, I think. Because like
yeah.
it you don't have to like really design a lot of cards. Like or design like intense cards, but you can make so many cards that are just furniture pieces.
Yeah.
There's infinite furniture pieces. And like that's already like 2,000 cards you can throw into the game and like slowly build up. Kind of like Animal Crossing, how you can just get all the furniture, but like it takes forever to get all the furniture. So I think
Yeah.
something like that would be kind of fun and like
Yeah.
relaxing because you're like, Oh, we'll see how many points I get. Like, let's see if I impress these people by how I design their house or something. It doesn't even have to be that. It could be like cooking or whatever. But
Yeah. No, that's a cool idea. I like it. I could see that as being like a fun mobile game too. Just like, yeah, I got
hmm
some time to kill, pick it up.
yeah,
You know, um, that's cool. For a second there in the beginning, I thought you were just gonna like describe Balatro. Like deck builder roguelike. It doesn't have combat, and it's got a green background. It's like poker.
it's like kind of psychedelic.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
There's
here's
tarot
the
cards.
twist though. There's jokers, right?
Yeah,
There's these special kind of cards that affect your other cards. So but you
yeah,
can only play a couple of them.
yeah.
No, but thanks for the question, Artcarp. Very good one. That's gonna do for the show. I think unless you want to take a little stop down at the rec room where we recommend something that isn't an indie game, and then we'll say our goodbyes. What do you guys recommend this week?
I am recommending. Actually, I will show this off on camera. This is the shirt I'm wearing. Right. So it's an Eagles shirt. It's got an eagle. It says "No one likes us, we don't care," and it says like Super Bowl, the Super Bowl champs or whatever.
Licks?
Um, and actually, yeah, Super Bowl licks. And so this came from my wife's aunt, who has
Oh,
they have an Etsy, she has an Etsy shop called Kathy's Finest. And they actually like they make a bunch of like Yankee stuff. And it's all like apparel and stuff like that. And like even I think like I don't know, necklaces and stuff, but they have a ton of items. They've sold a ton. They have great reviews. And I've heard about it, like it's been around for a bit, like at the family parties they talk about it. But yeah, Maria just got this for me out of nowhere from them. And she didn't order this, but they sent a little onesie too with the same thing on it
nice.
for the baby. So we were like, oh, that's awesome. So yeah, I'm just shouting out Kathy's Finest. People really love their baseball stuff. From what I see on here, like over 3,000 reviews, 5 stars on this shirt, this baseball shirt here. So pretty cool stuff. Kathy's Finest. Check it out at Cathys. Excuse me, and then Finest. And I think they even have an Instagram and some other stuff, but you can just search it on Etsy and throw them some support if you like any of their stuff.
Yeah, use promo code FRESH now.
Yeah, right. That'd be awesome. Maybe I got to set that up.
Oh man, we probably wouldn't get a kickback. It's just drive more business.
Yeah.
I'm recommending an album this week. So Sam Fender just put out an album called People Watching. If you don't know who Sam Fender is, you've probably heard his most famous song. It was pretty popping on TikTok in like 2021. It's called 17 Going Under. There's this like drop where you're just point where he's like, I was something scared to hit him, but I'd hit him in a heartbeat now. Blah, 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 blah. So that song's sick, 17 Going Under, but
Sick.
yeah, it's so sick, dude. Everything's sick right now, man. It's I don't know what's wrong with me. But People Watching just came out, full album, and it definitely feels a little bit more adult, like more mature coming from Sam Fender. Like, cause his earlier hits, definitely was like coming out of the like early 20 angst or and like kind of like lostness, and this feels a little bit more in line with like how like I feel like our generation's feeling a little bit more. But it's a really, I think, a great album from front to finish. You get a lot of like the first song, the title track, People Watching. I'm like, wow, this is like a more like not folk rocky, but like a definitely more real instrument version of the Killers, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like a lot
Yeah.
more some acoustic guitar in there, but also like more piano and not as synthy as the Killers, but not that the Killers are bad or anything like that. So he's got a similar voice to Brandon Flowers, but actually good.
Oh, hey, you played them at your wedding. All
I
right?
did. Well, no, listen, I like the Killers. And then there's like points where you're like, wow, like definitely the songwriting has a Bruce Springsteen-esque feel to it. And then there's some songs you're like, this feels like classic Genesis in a way. So a lot of different influences there. And then just this kind of fresh take to how we're all feeling, and it's good. There's some bangers. I would say if you're on the fence about listening, but if you like the things that I've mentioned, watch or not watch, listen to People Watching, and then listen to Arm's Length are like the two, I think, the best songs off the album. But I think the whole thing's good.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I saw you shared this on the Insta.
On the
So I was like,
IG.
oh, there you go. Yeah. Any relation to the Fender Guitar Company?
I mean, you never know, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes that's what you need is like a leg up to get
Right?
into the music industry. So maybe, but I don't think so.
Great name though.
Yeah.
Sam Fender. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely. So check that out, and that's gonna do for the show, folks. It's gonna do. I'm done with the pod. I'm Tommy Fresh. You can find me at Fresh Buds Pod everywhere. I have another podcast called Fresh and Buds. This week, my original guest, Taylor Morrow, one of my closest friends, is on the podcast again, and he's just the best. And you know, he brings a different vibe than the other guests, I promise. And the vibe that's like, this is a conversation in a coffee shop somewhere, and then loud laughing randomly. So there's that, and you can find us on all socials at Fresh Juice Pod. Matthew, where can people find you?
Find me at Matty Gorm, Gorm, on all the socials and such. But Tommy, another good ep in the books. Also, I do want to say we are still using a new uploading tool. And so we understand there's been some delays with Spotify, and we probably should have mentioned this at the beginning of the show, Spotify and YouTube. But we're working through it, and it's a kind of a beta tool. So just bear with us, and the episodes will go out at some point. So don't worry about that.
Listen, if they're getting affected by this, they didn't hear us say it at any point in the podcast. So because
that's true.
But YouTube seems to be the most reliable. So until that, if it doesn't show up on your audio platforms, check out the YouTube. So.
Yeah. Yep. There we go.
Fresh juice, fresh juice, fresh juice, fresh.